challenges in life is knowing enough to think you're right, but not enough to know you're wrong.
Yeah. Well, that is a big problem with a lot of people that watch these YouTube videos.
That's
right?
what it is. They say, oh, this is right. Oh, my gosh. But they don't know enough to know why it's wrong.
Well, this is what I want to talk to you about. What is it about people that there's this very compelling need to find something out that other people don't know, like the world is flat, like dinosaurs aren't real. Like that kind of stuff is very compelling to people.
So what I do in those cases, in the
Bigfoot.
Yeah. So what I do is I would say, instead of debating them, and some of your listeners are listening to this right now, all I would do is say, what is your best single bit of evidence for what you're claiming? And what would it take to show that you're wrong?
All right, well, let's go with a simple one.
So that's what I would ask.
Okay.
And I've done this exercise, and it doesn't work. You know why?
Why?
Because there was a guy who didn't believe we went to the moon. We spent a third of our time in our last session there. So there's someone I know who doesn't believe we went to the moon. Rather me just say he's skeptical. So I said, what kind of evidence would convince you? He said, images of the landing site of the Apollo missions. So I said, okay, here's a website where we sent, in fact, it wasn't us, it was the Chinese, I think it was the Chinese or Europeans, sent a probe, an orbiter to the moon so that it was close enough, because ground-based telescopes are not, they don't have the resolution to see the landing sites. But if you get close enough to the moon, you can. It photographed the entire surface of the moon, and there were the landing sites, and you saw the rover tracks and the base for the lunar module. And so that night he went home and found it. And then he came back and says, well, NASA could have faked that. Well, I'm done with you. We have no more to talk about. Because he's not ready to be convinced.
Well, that's a weird one, too.
Because I gave him the evidence he asked for.
Exact evidence.
That would convince him. And it did not convince him.
That's a singular event.
I said, I have no other conversation with him.
That's a singular event, which you could say in one way or another, like, it is possible that someone could fake a singular event. They can't fake whether or not the world's flat, right? Like that, to me, is the scariest one. That there's so many people out there that believe the world is flat because you could literally see the curvature of the Earth from a plane. I mean, you can get to parts of you look at the images from the space station where they circle the moon, or they circle the Earth, rather. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's many satellite images of the Earth in its entirety, and one of the things that the argument was how come every photograph of the Earth is a compilation of photographs? Well, because they're all taken from 300 miles up. The Earth is huge.
Yeah, here's way bigger than 300 miles.
Yeah, you have to take compilations.
Mosaic it. Yeah.
You have to. That's the only way to get images
except
of the
for
Earth.
the Apollo photo. The Apollo 17 coming back has the Earth. That's the famous one that has Africa and Antarctica in view. It's the full Earth. Very few full Earths. It's very hard to get a full Earth single photo.
Of course.
And when we went to the moon missions, when they're coming back, think about it. To get full Earth means the sun is behind the astronauts on the way back to Earth, which means the side of the moon facing Earth is not lit. But that's the side of the moon they came from. So they want to visit the moon while it's sunlight there. They don't want to need flashlights when they get to the moon. So if they visit the moon while there's sunlight, Earth, the view of Earth at that time will not be full. So Apollo 17 was there long enough so that by the time they left, the moon was basically a new moon, Earth was full moon, Earth was full Earth, and then they got a full Earth photo.
Those packs that they have on their back that regulate their temperature, that allows them to walk on the surface of the moon when it's 250 degrees above zero?
Well, the side that's facing the sun is more than 200 degrees, and in the shadow it drops.
250 degrees below, right?
Yeah.
So can it switch back and forth between those two environments?
Yeah, what you just insulate. The astronaut's insulated, and so when you're insulated, those temperature extremes are not felt. Or they're minimized.
And it's regulated by the pack.
Oh yeah,
in some sort of way.
Yeah,
so
it's a life
support. The pack
support.
goes warm.
It's not only
cool.
oxygen and it maintains the temperature.
But it's capable, obviously, of warming and cooling.
In the face of what's going on. It maintains the temperature. That's how you need to think about it.
Okay, so regardless of
it's not that it's cooling one side of you and chilling the other and heating the other side.
Right.
It's maintaining a temperature for you.
And when you are in space, like say when they're doing a spacewalk, like on the space station, same thing.
Same thing's being on the surface of the moon.
Because there's no atmosphere.
On Earth, you are in this cocoon, dare I say, of atmosphere. So all the air in this room is the same temperature. Because the air can communicate a difference in temperature to itself, equilibrating it across the whole room.
Right.
If you don't have air, then your temperature is measured by where's the energy coming from that's hitting you. And if the sun is hitting you, all that energy will be raising your temperature, and the side of you that's not facing photons, that temperature will drop. So you could survive it if you put yourself on a rotisserie. Figure out the right rotation rate.
And even then, you'd have to spin pretty quick in order to balance it all out.
I have to calculate that. Yeah, you have to figure out what the right rate is.
Now, when you get in a debate with a guy like that,
I don't debate
B.O.B. guy.
I don't debate people.
Okay, well, when you discuss,
because as the saying goes, when an
right.
argument lasts more than 5 minutes, both sides are wrong.
Well, that's a terrible saying. It's
definitely it's mostly
someone
right.
wrong and the other person's stubborn. You know, it could definitely last for hours.
Yeah.
That's not true at all.
It's not. It's true 80% of the time. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you got into it with that rapper that thinks that the
I'll tell you why, B.O.B. Because in his Twitter stream, he was saying he was invoking physics. And so I gotta deal with this.
Right. Yeah.
And so he showed a picture from Bear Mountain, which is a mountain in slightly upstate New York, where Manhattan is in the sight line of the summit of this mountain. And he says, given the curvature of the Earth and this formula, you should not be able to see Manhattan at all. Okay. It
depends on the height that you're viewing.
Well, thank you. Well, so you do the math, and it turns out Manhattan, the island, would not be visible at all. That's true. But any building taller than 15 stories would rise up above the curvature of the Earth, and you will see it. And if you look at the photo, you see the tall buildings rising above 15 stories. It's exactly what the correct formula shows, and not his formula, which was wrong and misinterpreted, claims to show.
Well, it's just bizarre because snipers have been using the literal curve of the Earth to plan where bullets go. That's
if
how
they
you
want it that
plot
precise.
out.
Oh, yeah.
You have to. When you shoot at a mile, you know, when you're shooting like well out over 1,000 yards, those factors.
So let me think. A mile. I have to ask, how much curvature of the Earth do you get after a mile? It's an interesting
you also get drop.
Question.
You get drop and curvature.
That'd be gravity drop.
Yes.
And then curve. Yeah. So both of those. Yeah.
Well, there's a good. Well, here's the thing to say, someone. If you have a bullet in your hand and you shoot a gun, which bullet drops faster?
Right.
They
generally they get the wrong answer to that.
Yeah, they drop at the exact same rate.
They'll hit the ground at the same time.
Exact same time, and that blows people's minds. They can't believe that's.
But we
fact.
do that in Physics 101. You know, it's a physics demo. So that's why physics is so important. You know, people say, "Oh, let's take biology and this." Great, but don't leave out the physics, because that's where the fundamental operations of nature are to be found, of the physical universe are to be found. So what you have is you have a gun at one side. It's like a thing that shoots out a projectile. I don't want to call it a gun. At one side of the stage, and then you have like a little stuffed animal at the other side of the stage, held up with an electromagnet at the top of its head. And these two are exactly the same level. As the projectile comes out from this mini cannon, it trips an electric circuit that releases the electromagnet at the top of the stuffed animal. The stuffed animal begins to fall. The bullet moves horizontally, but also falls, because gravity is pulling them both. And you watch the projectile curve down, you watch the stuffed animal curve down, and it hits the stuffed animal every single time.
The only factor that would change that would be if you put wings on the bullet and was dealing with the wind.
Wings.
Right?
Yeah, wind would affect it.
Yeah.
Do they have bullets with wings? I haven't seen that.
No, they don't.
Okay.
No, but if they did.
Yeah.
You know, if like you shot the bullet and then they figured out like clink and the wings came out.
I saw that on some James Bond movie.
Probably. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just got to be frustrating for you when these things come back around. Like there was no flat Earth theory when I was in high school. So
there were other things though. Think about it. When you're in high school, there was much more astrology going on.
Oh yeah.
The President Reagan.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Nancy Reagan had an astrologer. So today, you don't see much of it.
Unless you talk to Steve Maxwell.
Well, but it's still there. It's just not, it's not manifesting in public policy.
Some people believe in it deeply.
I agree, but it's not up there in public policy. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, Nancy Reagan was really the only one that made it public policy.
Sure, but at the bar, do you hear people saying, "What's your sign?"
Oh, hell
Is that still a pickup time?
Oh, hell
still?
yeah, 100%.
No, let it not be true.
Listen, dude, you're married.
On Tinder,
you're an older man.
I'm out of it.
You don't understand. If you want to get laid, you got to talk nonsense to people.
Got to talk.
Well, I'm a Scorpio. If you're a Taurus, we should just stop talking.
Okay, so I missed that. I misled myself. I thought it was fading.
Oh,
but Nancy Reagan was the big proponent.
Well,
at the time,
I mean, it's nonsense astrology now. It's not like someone who really understands astrological charts and can plot it, and the moon's in retrograde, and you were born on, Celsius is rising, and all that crazy crap that they tried. I don't know what they're doing.
I was on a talk show with an astrologer.
A real one?
Apparently, yeah. She's a real one or a fake one, right?
How do you know?
She says she's real.
Okay.
And I trust her because she talks about how fake other astrologers are.
Oh, so she's a hater.
No.
She's a hater. Don't trust her.
And she was saying that the Kennedys all died during a lunar eclipse.
Oh, scary.
And that this is a very checkable statement. She just says this, and everyone's listening and believing. And said, "Wow, that can't be by accident." And, well, I don't know when other Kennedys died, but I know when Jack Kennedy died, and it was November 22nd, 1963. So I don't need to know if there's an eclipse then. I just need to know what phase the moon is in.
Right.
Because you can only have a lunar eclipse when the moon is full. So the moon was nowhere near full. It was like 2 weeks away from full. Even if there was an eclipse, it didn't happen during an eclipse, is my point.
Right.
Okay? So...
Of course, because it was daylight.
Well, no, you can have a lunar eclipse at any time. Okay?
Yeah, you can have a solar eclipse.
You can have a solar eclipse at any time, too. It's just not for you.
Dark.
It's just not for you. It'd be for the other side of the earth.
In the world.
Right. Don't be so centric. In fact, when there's a lunar eclipse, anyone on the side of the earth that sees the moon will see the lunar eclipse. So, by the way, lunar eclipses, you get several per year, by the way, partial eclipses as a minimum. And every couple of years, there's full lunar eclipses. So these are not rare things to start. They're not rare, okay? So I said, he was shot when I forgot what moon it was, a first quarter moon. And she said, "Oh, well, this counts if they're anywhere within 2 weeks on either side of the eclipse."
What? That's a month.
That's a month out of 12. What? So I said, let me just shut up here and let her keep. It was
what did she say?
We were sharing the time. It was Pharrell had a talk show. We were both on Pharrell's talk show. So, and he likes science, by the way. And he wore a NASA shirt at the Academy Award group photo. That's cool. I got to give him some props for that. But